Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Never before in the history of sports podcasts have two men brought you opinion and analysis like these two. They speak for a city that's desperate for wins and titles, not whining and travesty. You might not agree with what they have to say, but you'll defend their right to say it. Sports fans across the world, from Chicago, Illinois, this is the Mac and Read Show.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the Mac and Read Show here on the Barroom Network. And we are live from the past, on YouTube. And, of course, we have every previous show on Spotify, iTunes, where you get your audio-visual needs. Remember to follow us on Twitter. Follow me at The Real Evan Mac. Follow Ross at Ross Read. And remember to follow the Barroom Network at Barroom Network. I'm Evan Mac. That's Ross Read. How you doing, Ross? What's happening?
I'm good. How you doing?
Good, brother. It's going to be May, and it is May. And
right.
We have a lot to get to as we're fresh off the draft. Feels like it's been a minute since we had that live reaction to the Bears drafting Darnell Wright. And then Bears went and made several more picks. So we'll dive into all of those and dissect them. Ross will give his takes on them, as will I. We'll talk about the misses, talk about the hits, of course. And then later in the show, we will also talk about the draft overall as a whole. We'll talk about the NBA playoffs, as now we're in the conference semifinals. Lakers looking strong. Lakers-Warriors should be a great series. And Celtics 76ers resumes. It will have gone final by the time you're viewing this, but we'll talk about that and we'll see if our predictions are right and talk about the other two matchups, of course. And this is a packed week. Talk about May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. May the 4th be with you. Kentucky Derby, we'll preview that. Who do we like? Is it too late to talk the Snowfall Series finale? That stuck with me, man. That fucked with me, too. A lot to get to. And is Jamie Foxx okay? We'll also check in on him. But to begin, we'll talk about the Bears draft. The draft is complete for 2023. The verdict widely positive, right? You saw the Bears draft a lot of what they needed as far as an offensive lineman with the first pick for them, the 10th overall pick, and filling needs defensively. So I'll quickly take you through it, and then we'll get Ross's predictions. But every pick that they had from this past weekend. But 10th overall, Darnell Wright, and we had been going on a couple weeks leading up to the draft saying pretty positively that the Bears were going to take a tackle. It just was a decision of which one. And Paris Johnson Jr. was the first tackle off the board. But Darnell Wright was picked instead of, Broderick Jones or Skoronski, was picked right after the Bears by Tennessee. But Darnell Wright from Tennessee, his stock was rising really well for the Bears. And, once you heard he was drafted by the Bears, you heard about his visit with them a few weeks ago and how intense it was and how they were throwing everything at him regarding the playbook and regurgitating what he had learned about the plays. And it just seems like a really put together young man who can play offensive line and can be an anchor into the rest of this decade and hopefully beyond, perhaps. So his stock was really rising because of that. And then a nasty dude, real physical. We've seen him on tape, the way he played Jalen Carter, the way he played Will Anderson. We can see why he went in the top 10. He fits right in at right tackle. You love to hear him talk about we're going to be in the parking lot when asked if his quarterback is hit late. And it fills a glaring need in the O-line and shuffling it around a bit. Should really fill in nicely. He was a top 10 overall recruit in 2019 out of high school, which we'll learn was a recruiting theme throughout the draft. But first team all SEC in 13 starts this past year. I already talked about him playing against top talent. But before I go on, Ross, we had our live reaction. In case you missed it, it's up on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, and you can check it out. But both of us agreed it was positive, and we felt this was the right pick for the Bears.
100%. I mean, you get a day one starter right away. I mean, he's going to go in there. He's going to be your right tackle, immediately, which is a huge fit and allows Braxton Jones to stay at his natural position at left tackle. Now, all of a sudden, you look at that Bears offensive line. You go Braxton Jones, Tevin Jenkins, Cody Whitehair, Nate Davis, and Darnell Wright, and that's a pretty solid starting five right there. And other than Cody Whitehair, it's also a very young starting five, and I think that's really one of the most important things out of this is Ryan Poles and Ian Cunningham wanted to start to build in the trenches with young football players, and we'll talk about some of their later draft picks because they continue to go in the trenches with this. They wanted size, they wanted toughness. They got a football player who's very, very mean. And I know Darnell Wright talked a lot about protecting Justin Fields, which is very, very important. But, probably his best skill set in college was his ability to be a run blocker. He was a power run blocker. They have a stat, here on his profile, they said Darnell Wright had 0 blown blocks on 388 design run plays last season. That was second best in college football. So you're going to run the football to the right side. You feel really good about him being able to secure that block. And then you look who's right next to him. It's a veteran football player, Nate Davis. Expect for the Bears to run a lot on that right side behind those two guys. Got Robert Tonyan in the offseason. He's another good pass. He's a good run blocker. And then, and you see they drafted a running back, but they also have Deontay Foreman and Juice Herbert. They're going to want to still run the football this year, and Justin Fields is also going to be a big part of that. But I love the pick. We talked about it last week. I love Darnell Wright. I don't think people realize, you can see it a little bit in the photos and the videos. This is a massive human being.
Huge.
Yes, he is all of 6'5", 333 pounds, and he was absolutely stonewalling pass rushers last year. Some of the best that got drafted in the first round this year, the Will Andersons of the world, the Jalen Carters of the world, some of the best guys in the SEC just could not get past this kid in pass rushing. And so I think the Bears I think they hit a home run, and they got a very good starter, hopefully for 10 plus years.
Yeah, everything you said, Ross, agreed with. That's the hope, right, is that this is the right tackle of the future. Bears were, one of the best teams running the football largely because of Justin Fields. And despite, every injury here and there with Herbert and David Montgomery now gone. But protecting him is one thing, but paving those running lanes is going to be huge. And Wright said in his introductory press conference, quote, "I embrace expectations upon myself. I have expectations upon myself bigger than just football." You love to hear that. "I have expectations to take care of my family. I don't know what my role for the team is, but whatever that role is, I'm going to take it full on and do my best I can." So I'm not sure what that role is, whether it's play right tackle or play wide receiver. Obviously, you're not doing that, big fella. Somebody tell coach that. But whatever that role is, I just want to try to do my best, whatever I can do. And you looked at the tape and everything that he did pre-draft, and it really sticks out. And there's a reason that he was the guy that the Bears selected 10th overall. And we're willing to trade that trade that happened the day of that ultimately pass up on Jalen Carter to get Darnell Wright from Tennessee. So as you're looking at the rest of the draft, we knew the defense was going to be paramount. And so in the second round, where the Bears had 2 picks, 53rd overall and 56th, they went ahead and got defensive tackle Gervon Dexter Sr. from Florida, who's 6'6" and over 300 pounds, just a monster of a human. Started all 13 games this past year at Florida. Athletic background. He played 4 years of basketball in high school, threw the discus, all that. Big body, stopped the run. You play SEC football. That's also going to be a plus for me. Certainly has the size and potential. He should rotate right away with the other D tackles. And then with the 56th pick overall, just a few picks later, is cornerback Tyreek Stevenson from Miami. And we're seeing a theme with Darnell Wright and these other picks where Stevenson was the top 50 recruit in the nation out of high school. He played a couple years at Georgia. He made his mark. Then he transferred to his hometown Miami Hurricanes. He was the best on the team last year in pass breakups, which is a great stat. 3rd team all conference. If you look at the tape, he's certainly got a lot of athleticism to play the lengthy receivers and then the speedsters to be able to blanket them, to jump with them, and then punch the ball out of receivers' hands, which is huge. You heard about the pass breakups a minute ago. He's almost a security blanket for me with Kyler Gordon, who's going into his second year. When you're thinking about the depth of the defensive backs and the secondary overall, at least challenge him. He could end up having a lot of playing time if he impresses early on in the preseason, and injuries could happen, God forbid. But onto the third round, they went 64th overall. They went with Zach Pickens from South Carolina, and he was a stud out of high school. He was Mr. Football, Gatorade Player of the Year when he came out, top 10 recruit nationally out of South Carolina. And Todd McShay was one of those guys who called him the steal of the draft, at least for the Bears. Adds depth in the middle of the D-line position, which was, one of the worst in the league last year. As far as the Bears overall, they were the worst in getting after the quarterback at the bottom of the league when they weren't able to create pressure at all. So another athletic big guy, good first step off the ball. He's got quick hands. He's got a lot of potential to rotate in with Dexter, and then Andrew Billings, who was just signed recently in free agency. And then in fourth round, 115th overall, they went with Rashawn Johnson, who backed up what's his name? Bijan Robinson, at Texas. And he was a former All-State quarterback. And, he's not challenging Khalil Herbert or Dante Foreman or even Travis Homer, you would think. But we've seen with all teams, not only the Bears exclusively, that you need depth at this position, whether it be at the practice squad or on that 53-man roster when it comes down to it. But he's a bruiser and he was honorable mention Big 12, I think, and he obviously playing behind Bijan Robinson. You're playing in that dude's shadow, but even the backup, he brings some swagger to that running back core and certainly be a good special teams player if it comes down to that too. It's good to have depth with Foreman and Herbert's injury histories, and that position is just next man up. And then the fourth round, a guy who dropped pretty far out of most folks' eyes was Tyler Scott from Cincinnati, wide receiver. So fast kid, playmaker, second team All AAC, led the team in receiving yards, receptions, and scores. Some had him as a top 50 pick, even though this was a deeper wide receiver draft. But good versatility, route running. He's got that big play potential. He had a bunch of touchdowns over 30 yards at Cincinnati. He can step up where needed with time for sure. And then rounding out the draft with the last four draft picks for the Bears, went with Noah Sewell out of Oregon, Penei Sewell's brother, with the Lions. And that family has had a bunch of football history in it. And then Terrell Smith out of Minnesota was a cornerback in the fifth. Another defensive tackle, Travis Bell out of Kennesaw State. Defensive back Kendall Williamson out of Stanford in the seventh round. So all in all, very defense heavy. A couple skill position guys. D tackle was paramount, though. What'd you make of those other picks beyond the first one for the Bears roster?
Yeah, listen, they got big boys. They got some really big kids out there, and they got some really athletic guys. I think that's what the Bears wanted to do. They wanted to get younger, they wanted to get stronger, and they wanted to get more athletic. And so, you start at the top after Darnell Wright. Dexter is, like you said, 6'6", 310 pounds. Remember, the Bears last year, 31st in run defense and dead last in scoring defense. And so you hire a guy like Matt Eberflus, and he just wasn't going to – that's just something that he wasn't going to accept. He needed some beef up front. And he got Dexter, who is going to come in there, and good luck trying to run the football up the gut against this guy. He's going to be able to shed guards and centers and be able to push those guys in the backfield. Remember, they got a guy like Tremont Evans to come in here and kind of clean that up and really attack the ball carrier and get a ton of tackles. And you needed a guy like Dexter to help shed that, shed those blockers up front. So I love that pick. He's awesome. And then, I'm gonna skip Stevenson for now. I'll come back to him. But you pair Dexter with Zach Pickens, another big boy, 6'4", 291. So if Dexter is going to be kind of your nose tackle, then you needed your three technique pass rusher up the middle, and that's what Pickens does. And this reminds me a lot of when the Bears back in the day under Brian Urlacher, very similar defense, when they had Keith Traylor and other names escaping me right now. It'll come back to me in a little bit. But they had basically,
pre-Tommy Harris.
This was pre-Tommy Harris. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So by the time Tommy Harris got here, it was like Tommy Harris and Tank Johnson. We can look it up in a minute, but they had two big boys. Keith Traylor was one of them. I'm forgetting the name of the other one right now. But you wanted some beef up front to be able to help your linebackers, be able to get free and make plays. And that's what Pickens and Dexter are going to do. And so now the Bears, I think, in my opinion, are saying we dare you to run on these guys up front because we feel like we want you to throw the football against our outstanding secondary that we're building. And that's when a guy like Stevenson comes into play. Tyreek Stevenson, he's 6 feet tall. He's 200 pounds, tall corner. He's lean. Arm length was a big deal for Ryan Poles in his draft. He's going to be able to play press coverage, get his hands on receivers at the line of scrimmage, and help them jam a little bit. And then you look at that Bears secondary now, and you get to float out there Eddie Jackson, Jaquan Brisker, Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon, Tyreek Stevenson. I will take that all day. I think that's probably the best secondary, definitely in the division. And it's going to shape up to be one of the best secondaries in the conference. And then you just add it, like you said, depth across the board. You need guys on special teams to be able to contribute and make plays. Rashawn Johnson is going to be able to play special teams for the Bears. He's also going to be able to spell your running backs. You hit it on the head. Running backs never stay healthy anymore. So it's a good probability one of these guys is going to go out. And Johnson, who backed up Bijan Robinson, is going to be able to step in and get some carries. Very tough runner between the tackles. He's awesome. I love the Tyler Scott pick. Tyler Scott has got a lot of Tyler Lockett to his game. Basically, 3-step drop, get the football in his hands, and let him cook. Just let him cook. Let him burn through the secondary and get those yak. But also he can, he's a good deep ball tracker too. I love that pick. I love what the wide receiver room looks like now because DJ Moore is at the top. You got Darnell Mooney. You got Chase Claypool. Now you add Tyler Scott to the mix. You still have Jones that you drafted from last year. Things just feel better about that wide receiver room. And then Sewell to me is just straight. He's just straight special teams, and he's probably going to be able to get on the field a little bit. Injuries arise and stuff like that, but. Listen, he's a young man that should just be able to, stick in the league for a while playing special teams. And there's nothing wrong with that. And that's the kind of guys that you want to look for when you're in that 5th round area. Same thing with Terrell Smith. Adding depth to that secondary. You don't know what you're going to be able to do with, Jalen Johnson. He really hasn't shown that he can stay on the field long-term throughout his career. He's also got a contract situation coming up. So maybe you hit something with Terrell Smith, another long, lengthy corner. And then your last 2 picks or pure depth guys to see if they can fight and make the roster.
Sure. Yeah, talking about special teams, when you talk about those last 4 especially and how they can find a spot on the roster, Noah Sewell and Terrell Smith, and you think about the past when Bears had some very notable, and obviously we know because we were Bears fans, but notable defensive or special teams players, in, like Adrian Peterson, the other Adrian Peterson, and Badejo, guys like that. And also, were you talking about Brian Robinson when you were talking about Keith Traylor, talking defensive tackle earlier in the show?
Yeah, I was thinking about Keith Washington, yes.
Keith Traylor?
I was thinking about Ted Washington and Keith Traylor. Sorry, Ted Washington.
There you go. Well, there we go. Looked it up in the past. Yes. So, and then going back to, we were talking about Tyreek Stevenson, and that tape, man, really jumps out. I watched the defensive tackles too, who really do have great first steps and just are big guys who can help shore up the middle and stop the run. But Tyreek Stevenson, he told reporters in his introductory call that Matt Eberflus and him during his visit were talking about old school football, and that describes how Stevenson plays, and he is just very tough and physical, and playing all over the field. And he's just, the weaknesses are there with these guys are in early 20s and played just college football. They're going to have to learn very quickly and adjust to, if they don't have good play awareness or can't adjust to zone coverage, they'll learn. But the physical specimens, especially with those guys in Gervon Dexter and Tyreek Stevenson, Zach Pickens, they have good ceilings for sure. I'm very pumped for that. As far as what the Bears did not address, obviously the edge has been something that is really glaring throughout the offseason, and we talked about their lack of a pass rush and it's not going to turn around very quickly. They're not going to go worst to first with a year difference in the pass rush, but I feel like maybe one or two guys they may have passed on with these, going certainly specifically towards cornerbacks or defensive backs and defensive tackles. And then the same could be said for offensive linemen. You want some depth there to be able to protect Justin Fields and challenge these other guys. But am I wrong in thinking that the Bears kind of whiffed at edge? Or are you worried at all about that, Ross?
I am a little concerned about it. Remember they still have, well over $30 million to play with in this free agency market, and they still have a lot of money, rolling over into next year as well. So there's some free agent guys out there right now. If you look at, like a Jadeveon Clowney, Yannick Ngakoue are still on the market. I think we'll see more cuts as we get closer to training camp. Some veterans are going to be out there. I think the Bears they're going to probably sign one or two guys via free agency that they can bring in for 1 year. I mean, at this point, it wouldn't hurt to sign Ngakoue and Jadeveon Clowney and probably get both of those guys for like $12, $14 million total, and sign them for 1 year prove-it deals, and then go back in the draft again next year and see if you can adjust that situation again. Remember, they'll have their first round pick next year. They also have the Carolina Panthers first round pick next year. The rookie starter Bryce Young, we figured that's probably going to be a really good draft pick. So they're going to have some options next year if they want to find their pass rush of the future. But I fully expect them to bring in a couple edge guys in the next couple months leading up to training camp, just to kind of bring some bodies in there, some veteran guys that can step into a defense right away and say, hey, listen, just go rush the pass rusher and help these young guys up the middle that we just drafted.
Yeah, that's fair. There is still a lot of offseason left, and you hit the nail on the head about the Bears having still a lot of cap space left, and those few guys that are out there, some vets that might fill out the position because, we know Travis Gibson is the answer, but they really did address that need in the middle, and hopefully that would take some pressure off the guys on the edge and these big-bodied guys, like the new Bears and Gervon Dexter and Zach Pickens and Billings. It just is a complete 180 in that position, which is great to see. Hopefully have some good depth there. And I know you don't like to give grades, but did this really impress you? Was this, I don't know, a B or an A to you, Ross?
It did impress me. I think this is like, obviously last year was Ryan Pohl's first draft as a general manager. We didn't have a first round pick last year. He inherited a lot of pieces from the last regime. He spent most of the offseason cleaning house. To me, this felt like his first actual draft where he was able to put his stamp on things. And we see the kind of profile that he likes. Him and Coach Eberflus, I think they're aligned in wanting really tough, physical football players that are really big. And then also they really like, length on football players. You look at these corners, you look at these defensive linemen and Darnell Wright. These guys have all long arms and able to really attack and their measurables are really good. And so I think that's going to be a theme going forward when he drafts. And, I like it a lot. I think that this team got a lot better over the weekend, which, obviously there really was no place to go but up after you win three games last year. But I just like how he navigated the whole process. I like how don't forget, one of the things they got from the draft is DJ Moore, and that's huge. And he got DJ Moore and a first round pick for next year, which I think it could be a top 10 pick, and so that's really important. Rome wasn't built in a day, and a Super Bowl contender is not going to be built in a day either. And I think he's putting together some really good building blocks to hopefully by 2024-ish, the Bears can really compete in a very winnable division. Aaron Rodgers is gone. Kirk Cousins is old. We don't know what, Jordan Love has. You never can really trust, Jared Goff. And so I like the future of the Bears going forward. And this weekend was a big jump forward for them.
Defensively, I think they really hit, and I can't put a grade on it either until we see some football played. But you can't speak enough about what we talked about, building it in the trenches, right? And if that's your guy in Darnell Wright and you have a starter for the next several years, then that's a win. And let's hope he just stays healthy and learns quickly and does everything in Darnell Wright. And then Gervon Dexter and Zach Pickens look like some really good valued picks in the second and third round. The same with Tyreek Stevenson, and the skill position guys too. They all fill needs. I may have liked to see, an offensive lineman and maybe, you take a risk on a really athletic edge rusher or something like that in the later rounds just to fill that out and challenge those guys. But you do entrust Ryan Poles and his ability to determine where these guys should go and what talent and what this roster needs overall. So, going back to the draft as a whole, it was the Bears picking 9th overall originally, and then they swapped with Philly, and Philly clearly wanted Jalen Carter. They wanted any Georgia Bulldog in that draft and beyond. But Jalen Carter must have really stuck out to them. What do you think is the percentage of the Bears maybe having some remorse on passing on Jalen Carter? I don't know.
You know what? I don't think there's any remorse, to be honest with you. I think when you have a young football team like the Bears have, I don't think the infrastructure was in place to bring in a guy like Jalen Carter. And I think I tried to tell people all offseason, you could hear it from Poles and Eberflus. They talk about their hits principle. They talk about being accountable. They talk about men that they want to bring in and mold and leadership and stuff like that. And this is no knock to Jalen Carter, but obviously with his transgressions, I just didn't think it was a fit for the Bears right now. And they couldn't afford to take him in the first round and that pick not hit. You know what I'm saying? Like, at least the Eagles are locked and loaded. They got picks for days. This is a team that just came off of a Super Bowl run. They got an outstate. They had more of a luxury to take a guy like Jalen Carter, because if Jalen Carter does something crazy tomorrow and they have to cut him, guess what? The Eagles are still really good. Like, there's no skin off their back. You can't say that for the Bears. And so they're just two different franchises heading in two different directions at the moment. And so what makes sense for the Eagles doesn't necessarily make sense for the Bears. I completely get it. And I think that, while the talent of Jalen Carter is real, being able to find a guy that you can anchor around, Justin Fields and pair with him for the next 10 years and be Justin Fields' bodyguard, so to speak, that to me means a lot more than drafting a guy like Jalen Carter, because we might be, talking a couple years from now, and those two defensive tackles that they took, not in the first round, could be could give you more, in contribution than Jalen Carter or something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, the potential is there, and it quote unquote be steals in those eyes too. But I know Jalen Carter's stock had been rising, certainly. From all it's crazy to see from all the off the field issues and all these character quote issues that you saw from a lot of analysts and people from around the league, and how it just flipped on its head, and they say, oh, he's the best overall prospect. What are you talking about? Put him ahead of Bryce Young and Will Anderson, all these guys. It's crazy, but the rich get richer in the Eagles, who also drafted Nolan Smith out of Georgia later in that round too. So that defense is going to continue to be pretty nasty. But, in the draft overall, we saw history being made with Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud and Anthony Richardson all going in the top 5. And Bryce Young, we knew that he was going to go to Carolina, so they get their quarterback of the future. C.J. Stroud going to the Texans, and then the Texans trading up to get Will Anderson. So back-to-back, they get C.J. Stroud and then arguably the best defensive player in the draft, and Will Anderson, studs. And then the Colts get the most athletic quarterback for sure of their history when you go from Peyton Manning to Matt Ryan to this guy, and potentially the most athletic quarterback we've seen with a lot of scouts. That was the opinion there. Of these guys, who impresses you the most, and what's the best fit, I should say, Ross?
I think Bryce Young's going to be really good. I think he's going to be really good because I like Frank Wright a lot. And they did some interesting things in the offseason to put some pieces around him. But also, that division is not very good, in my opinion. Remember, this is a division that just lost Tom Brady. And so their quarterback situation is shaky right now in Tampa Bay. They're going through a little bit of a rebuild. They could be in the Caleb Williams hunt a year from now. And you look at, the Saints, who brought in Derek Carr, and I mean, does that really do much for you? I don't know if that does much for you, especially when it's Dennis Allen as the head coach. I think I'd feel a little better about it if it was Sean Payton. And Atlanta is a frisky team. They got Bijan Robinson there, but I still don't trust the quarterback. I don't trust Ritter, overall. So I think Bryce Young is going to be stepping into a solid situation. But to me, it's just Anthony Richardson. I'm a huge fan of Anthony Richardson. I love his upside. I love his athletic ability. I just love the way he kind of took on this whole draft process, and he wasn't afraid. He had a ton of confidence, and he's getting a head coach now in Shane Steichen, whatever his name is, who just came off of an amazing run with a guy that is pretty similar in a skill set in Jalen Hurts. But Anthony Richardson is actually a bigger football player, and Michael Pitts Jr. is still there, and Taylor, the running back, is Jonathan Taylor, is still there too. And so there's not going to be a lot of pressure on Anthony Richardson right away, which means he can come in there and just completely ball out and have some fun. Not a great division either. Texans, they're a bad football team. The Titans are in complete disarray right now. They have maybe the worst skill group I've ever seen on paper in the last couple of years. Jaguars are definitely a good football team coming off a playoff run. But I think Anthony Richardson is in the best situation because I like the head coach pairing, and I like the fact that he can walk into that situation playing on turf with no pressure and just have fun and light it up.
I mean, you can't say enough about his athletic ability too, and that's a breath of fresh air for a Colts team that certainly needs it and has great skill position players. Look at Jonathan Taylor, and it's like you were saying, fits with Shane Steichen's system. I'm maybe mispronouncing that, but he could have a big impact right away. I mean, certainly take your lumps, and it's not a great division, but you'll play Jacksonville twice a year, and that'll probably be a buzzsaw, but. He has that ability to potentially learn really fast and be that potential franchise quarterback for the Colts. That's a breath of fresh air. You like it. You like to see it. And, overall, winners and losers, I think certainly filling those needs. You saw Carolina wanted Bryce Young overall by trading that pick to the Bears and giving up that King's ransom, if you will, and the picks and all that. And Texans knew they certainly wanted a franchise defensive player, a guy like J.J. Watt in that same, or at least putting that sort of stock in a guy like Will Anderson to be that franchise defensive player, and then franchise quarterback in C.J. Stroud. We didn't talk about that much, who was a stud for Ohio State and brings a lot of potential there. And then, other teams filled needs, and then others did not. You were sort of head scratching with the Lions, what they were doing, drafting Jahmyr Gibbs at 12th overall from Alabama, and then getting Jack Campbell. And, the Seahawks, they were hitting. They got Devin Witherspoon from Illinois, who was the best corner potentially out of this class, and then able to go get Jackson Smith and Jigma. So that Seahawks receiving room is just loaded right away. I think it was a good pick for the Ravens, who signed. We didn't even talk about because we missed a show. Lamar Jackson signing the biggest contract on the heels of Jalen Hurts signing that biggest contract for quarterbacks. So now he gets another wide receiver, Zay Flowers out of Boston College. That's huge for them. But what else stood out for you, Ross, of these other teams?
Yeah, I mean, again, going back to the Colts, I really like what they did. They got Richardson in the draft, but they also added, a bunch of fun pieces as well to their roster. They got Julius Brents. I'm a big fan. Darius Rush, Blake Freeland. They got the defensive tackle. I'm not going to say his name from Notre Dame. So I really like the pieces that they added, to their roster as well. Seattle, getting Devon Witherspoon, adding to that secondary again. We kind of talked about that on draft night, but, I was a huge fan of that. And, as much as I hate to say it, but, when you put Jordan Addison on the Vikings opposite, Justin Jefferson, right, that's a good fit. Jordan Addison was a damn good wide receiver in college, and you put him against, opposite one of the best wide receivers in football, and that's just a really good fit for them. So I'm a big fan of those picks right there. Kind of some misses. Commanders, they didn't take a quarterback. I don't know what they're doing. Sam Howell, Taylor Heineke, it just feels like they're in a holding pattern until they can sell that football team.
They took a corner with their first pick. It's like, what are you doing? You're not swinging for anything with that. I don't know.
Yep.
And like you said, Jordan Addison going to the Vikings is pretty scary, where they, they might have that best 1-2 punch if he pans out. Now that Adam Thielen's gone, he has the potential to step up for sure, and play really well alongside one of the best in the game in Double J. And I think, the Bills adding Dalton Kincaid was a smart pick for tight end for a little bit of relief for a guy like Josh Allen. And, these other teams, nothing crazy in the first round that was unexpected. Besides, do you agree with Will Levi dropping, out of the first round? I know that the cameras showed him repeatedly and his beautiful girlfriend and his family, but are you surprised that the Commanders or one of these other teams didn't go for him?
A little bit, but I mean, I think that a lot of it shows you. A lot of teams, in my opinion, thought that after they couldn't get one of those first 3 quarterbacks and they didn't want to pay the draft capital to get those guys, that they were content in kind of waiting to see, what's going to happen next year. The quarterbacks coming into next year are going to be really good as well. I mean, obviously, I think Caleb Williams is going to be, the headliner. I think a lot of football teams are going to be kind of jockeying for position to come out there and get him, but there's some other guys that are going to be out there as well that you're going to want to take a look at. Drake May is the quarterback from North Carolina. He was awesome last year. He's going to be a year older in that offense, which is really high powered. He's probably going to be a top 5 pick as well. So you look at Caleb Williams and Drake May, and we see it every year. A couple guys start to pop up throughout the season. I'm sure Ohio State will have another quarterback who will shine because he's throwing the football to Marvin Harrison Jr. and the rest of those guys. So there's still some time, and I think a lot of people were just like, listen, I would rather wait to see what happens next year than to maybe shoot my load a little bit on a guy like Will Levis, who we're not too sure about.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Yeah, agreed with that. I just think, looking around the league, those who were in the playoffs drafted just typically better. And you look at the Eagles, and I'm singing their praises a lot here, but they filled up a lot of needs, and it made a lot of sense for them to continue to try and dominate the NFC. But circling back to the NFC non-draft news as we wrap up the football segment here on Mac and Read, I also feel like it's been a while. Again, I talked about Lamar Jackson getting the bag and representing himself, which is unbelievable. And I know we talked about it repeatedly. Like, you need an agent, but he got it done, man, and he must have leveraged that Jalen Hurts move for sure. But Aaron Rodgers, we have to celebrate a little bit. We have to, blow some confetti or something, because he was officially out of the NFC North. He's out of Green Bay, and he's a Jet. He's a Jet all the way. And he's bringing most of his Packers receivers with him. Randall Cobb just signed there, and we knew that Alan Lazard had went there before the signing went official. He's living it up in New York, going to Knicks games and Rangers games. Hallelujah, Ross. That's all I can say. I would have liked to see, Justin Fields hit his prime and play against Green Bay with a better roster, but I'm ultimately just happy that the nightmare's over to an extent.
It is. And, I hate to say it, but the whole Aaron Rodgers, like, he's at every Knicks game. It just feels very contrived. It feels very forced at this point. Like they're trying to, boost up his rating and stuff like that, and get everybody to like him already in New York City and stuff like that. So, they have the cameras on him. He's sitting there with Sauce Gardner. What are they even going to talk about? Like Sauce is like 15 years younger than him and stuff like that. So, but I'm happy for Lamar. That's the biggest thing. That's the biggest takeaway. Lamar deserved it. He deserved to get that bag. He's got some weapons. He got Odell Beckham Jr. there. Lamar Jackson deserved to stay in Baltimore. He's won a MVP there. He's got them in the playoffs almost every year. That fan base loves him. That's a great fan base, and it's really cool to see. As much as he wanted to, force his way out and stuff like that. The guy just wanted to be treated fairly, and it's glad to see that they took care of him with that.
Yeah, Lamar Jackson, and then talking about the franchise perspective from the Ravens perspective, to be able to get over that hump of, or to be able to alleviate Lamar Jackson's concerns of any contract extension, another year by just franchising him, it just makes a lot of sense. And now he can play free, he can just ball out because he knows what to expect. And they went and drafted another wide receiver. They went and got Odell Beckham Jr. So their potential is there for them to, go ahead and play really well in the AFC North. And yeah, I have no sympathy for Aaron Rodgers, and hopefully he gets beat repeatedly by Buffalo Bills and the rest of this team. Yeah, he was talking to what's his face, Turtle. He was sitting next to Turtle and Sauce Gardner. It was a weird foursome over there. That was everybody and their mom was at that fucking Knicks game. That's for sure. With Tracy Morgan and Dave Chappelle and Chris Rock and all the Rockettes. It was wild. So let's switch to the NBA playoffs as the show rolls on. And before we talk about that matchup with the Knicks and the Heat, we'll lead with that great game last night between the already legendary Steph Curry and LeBron with the Lakers. They'd taken game 1 in San Fran over the Warriors. The Warriors just did like they usually do, just shot themselves back into the game late, and it was very, 3 dominant for them to get up to potentially tying the game and winning the game. But the second half was just dominated by the Lakers. The Warriors came up short because Anthony Davis largely was a big reason of that. Him, dominating the paint, good for 30 points, 23 rebounds, just a monster game. And LeBron added a double-double. D'Angelo Russell had 19 points, huge shots in the second half. He was taking over and really playing well against Clay and Steph and company. The great actor Dennis Schroeder, he added 19 points. The Warriors, they looked off. Maybe it was because of the Game 7 series. Maybe Steph was a little off from going to the fucking Met Gala or whatever. Maybe it was just jitters overall. But this is a team that doesn't have a presence in the paint besides Kevon Looney, and if they're not, who still managed to get 23 fucking rebounds, again over 20 rebounds. He's averaging 20 rebounds a game, which is just absurd. But when Warriors aren't hitting threes, they just aren't looking like world beaters. And especially when the Lakers come in and play good defense like they did. Steph, Clay, and Jordan Poole had, 6 threes each, and the Lakers had 6 overall. What does that tell you? And Lakers were able to eke out that win. And then the difference maker was also the foul calls, which you hate to see. And the Lakers went to the line 24 times, including 1 tech from Draymond. 29 times. And the Warriors shot 6 free throws overall in that game. So it's just the beginning, but doesn't it feel like LA and LeBron and of course him just becoming the all-time leading scorer, and now he's got a healthy Anthony Davis and bringing these journeymen along with them. It feels like there's a big run coming back by the refs. And I know it's early on, it's just one game against the Warriors, but they have a very good defense, and that could be a big difference in a healthy Anthony Davis that takes that pressure off LeBron to catapult them to the Western Conference Finals and beyond.
I mean, you hit it on the head. The big thing is Anthony Davis. If Anthony Davis is healthy and he's going to play inspired basketball like he did last night, it's going to be tough for the Warriors to beat him because they don't have anybody who can match up with him. And that's the glaring weakness of this Warriors roster is, if you remember, they drafted, Wiseman a couple of years ago thinking that he was going to be that guy. He just never panned out. They ended up trading him to Detroit at the trade line this year. Then they also have Kuminga on their roster, and they thought that maybe he could be the guy to add some size and athleticism down low, and he just has played himself completely out the rotation. And so now the Warriors, they have to rely on, frankly, 2 old guys down low. And Kevon Looney, who's been awesome, but he's older, and he's not really that athletic. And Draymond Green, who doesn't really play in the paint anymore. You see him as a facilitator mostly on the outside, and they don't have anybody off the bench they can bring in and add some size. And so if Anthony Davis is going to do that, it's going to be really, really tough for the Warriors. With that said, I think that Steve Kerr is a smart coach. I think he'll make some adjustments going forward. I do think the Warriors had tired legs. They just played a Game 7 2 nights ago, right? And that was a very emotional series that they're coming off of. LA had a little bit more rest for them. But I think they're going to make some adjustments. I think the adjustments they're going to make is they're going to try and pack the paint in as much as possible on defense and force those LA guys to shoot the ball on the outside. And I think that's where they struggle at. LeBron James this year has shot under 30% from three-point land. They don't really have a lot of three-point shooters on their roster. Anthony Davis has struggled shooting outside the paint as well. And I think that's where you're going to see the adjustment. And then the Warriors, they got to get back to moving the basketball around and getting more cuts and size. They got to challenge Anthony Davis, in my opinion, in the paint. challenge him to make a play and see if he can make a play without fouling people. And this to me just feels like it's got 7 games written all over it, because they're probably going to ease into this. I feel, pretty good about them winning on Thursday night, as they have another home game, and they can very, very easily steal a game, in LA. That's just a very short trip for them. This just feels like a 7-game series. The bigger one of this, in my opinion, is Denver, because Denver is just going to smoke, Phoenix.
Already rolling through Phoenix.
Yeah, they're up 2-0. Chris Paul is going to be out now for most of the series, if not all of the series. The Suns have 0 depth after this Kevin Durant trade, and Jokic is good. He's really, really good. And Jamal Murray looks like that bubble Jamal Murray that we had from a couple years ago. And if Denver gets an extended, time break and some time off, especially Jokic with those knees and stuff, while the Lakers and Warriors beat the crap out of each other, the Nuggets are going to the NBA Finals.
Really think so. I mean, the way they're playing, and circling back to Lakers Warriors, you talked about that performance in the paint from Anthony Davis, and there was just no answer for the Warriors, because the Warriors just, in Draymond and Kevon Looney, both just pass the ball and get rebounds at this point. And Draymond doesn't do a lot for that team when he's not scoring or facilitating. I mean, he certainly brings some tenacity defensively, and Looney too. But if you aren't able to help put points on the board, it's tough. And it did take Golden State so long in that game 1 to pass the ball like Golden State and get open looks and hit those threes that they really want and get good shots. It was a lot of just bad forced shots, like Steph Curry going up against Anthony Davis, who has been blocking several shots in that game. It's all out of sorts, but it does look like that. You would think when you see Denver just dominating, jumping out to a 2-0 lead in that series against Phoenix, looking super Donovan, in that game where Jokic, he went off for 39 points and 16 rebounds, and a slog of a game where they only put up 97 points to the Suns 87 in that game too. It does look like 7 games, which kind of seems like bad news for the Warriors. Certainly there's something to be said about momentum and keeping that going, keeping that sort of momentum going. If you're the Lakers, certainly into that. If they go down 0-2, it's got to be over, I would think. But, looking at the Eastern Conference, as you see, the Sixers and Celtics are going to tip off game 2. Mm-hmm. They got the new MVP and Joel Embiid back. That's going to be a tough series. That could maybe go 7 games too. You saw the Sixers steal one with James Harden going off and for 45, being second banana to Joel Embiid. He knew he had to step up, and he had the outfit to back it up, which was ridiculous. And Google it if you've not seen it, but he had a big game 1. It was really impressive from Tyrese Maxey, Tobias Harris, those guys, Anthony Melton, but it was all Harden who provided 45 of those points that ultimately put them over. So it'll be interesting. You would think the Celtics would bounce back big, and then the Heat-Knicks series should be real spicy too. And the Heat kind of got screwed with some calls, and it's tough to play in the Garden, but refs really put them as in the Knicks to really get in a good position and to avoid an 0-2 hole, which is maybe what the NBA wanted with Jimmy Butler out in that game. Jimmy was like flipping off the crowd and being real chirping, and that should be a fun series as it continues on. But we'll see what Embiid brings now that he's healthy back, and see if they can roll through the Celtics. So what are you making of the East right now?
Yeah, I mean, the East is a free for all. It's complete parity in the East right now. I think my biggest thing, I'm super disappointed in the Celtics just overall. Listen, they should have taken quick work of the Atlanta Hawks. They let them hang around that series. They had to go back to Atlanta when they didn't really need to finish that thing off. And then you follow it up with a complete dud on your home court. You let James Harden, who can barely get past people anymore, just completely cook you for 45 points. I thought their execution at the end of that game, I watched the entire game, was just piss poor. Coaching was bad. They're throwing the ball all over the place. They give up kind of a weird game-ending dunk almost from Tyrese Maxey at the end of that. I just thought they were bad. I think they missed Ime Udoka. I think Joe Mazzulla is a little bit in over his head a little bit. But with all that said, like now, they just feel like they didn't have the passion throughout this whole playoffs. They're just kind of coasting through it a little bit. You better wake up tonight because Joel Embiid is coming back. I don't know how healthy he is, but just his mere presence on the court changes things, and you don't want to lose home court advantage completely. For the New York in the Heat series, what Miami has been able to do is just outstanding. When we talk about how bad the coaching has been for Boston, I think Eric Spoelstra is, if not the best coach in the NBA, he's definitely one of the two best in the NBA. He's absolutely outstanding. He gets the most out of anybody. They have 7 undrafted guys on their roster. No Jimmy Butler, and they were able to hang into game 2. Jimmy, gets hurt at the end of game 1. They still finish that game. I just love the way Spoelstra has his guys ready to compete every single night. And they went to New York and they got what they wanted, which was one game. They just needed one game.
Could have gotten 2.
Yep. They should. Yeah, they could have gotten 2. If Brunson doesn't get hot at the end of game 2 and those refs kind of, don't call a couple of those calls, we could be talking about Heat up 2-0. But I like the idea to rest Jimmy Butler because this is probably going to be a long series. Don't have him continue to push it on that ankle. Get him as healthy as possible. And now you go back to Miami where your role player is going to feel more comfortable. Jimmy's got extra break to get out there and play. I like the way Bam Adebayo played more. And, I like the Heat in this series. And the Knicks feel like, the moment might be a little too bright for them, or they're maybe a year away, or they're one guy away. They had Obi Toppin shooting like 11 threes in one game. That's not the guy that you want shooting that many threes in a game. It was good to see them get Julius Randle back out there. Listen, if they don't have Julius Randle in that game, they don't win that basketball game for sure. So that feels like that's also going to be a long series too. They're just going to beat the crap out of each other and see who goes to the Eastern Conference Finals. Again, I go back to Denver. Feels like Denver's year to me, because every other team around them right now is beating the crap out of each other. And Denver can finish up this series by this weekend. And if they do that and they're able to relax and get into the Western Conference Finals and beat a beaten up Lakers or Warriors team, and they get to the finals and beat a beaten up Knicks, Heat, Celtics team, I don't know who's stopping that Denver machine right now. It's just too formidable in my opinion.
Denver's so deep, and you knew that they kind of got a raw deal with the last couple years. You knew that Jokic was that dude and just an incredible player. But with the depth around him, Jamal Murray, dealing with injury issues, Michael Porter Jr. the same, Aaron Gordon's like, flash in the pan type of guy. But what Bruce Brown brings, and you sign a guy like Reggie Jackson and Jeff Green, guys who've been there before. But Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic are just, the guys who are outplaying the rest of these other players in the NBA playoffs. You said it right there, Ross. And I do want some new blood in the finals, and especially, with LeBron and Steph having dominated, their respective conferences for so long. But Jokic, MVPs are great and all, but he wants rings, and he's an impressive talent for sure. And game 2, was evident that, taking out the Suns in that second game, and Jamal Murray has been really outstanding to watch. So yeah, I'm curious. But with the Knicks and the Heat and the Celtics and the Sixers series, you talked about coaching being paramount, and Doc Rivers, I thought that was a big reason why the Sixers would be where they're at, and a big reason why they can get over the Celtics, because Doc Rivers is a big difference maker as a coach. And the same with Eric Spoelstra, like a guy who is able to just not rely just on Jimmy Butler, but look what they did without Jimmy Butler. And as an 8 seed, a play-in seed, to go this far is really impressive. So it's been fun. It is not disappointed. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, I mean, the whole NBA playoffs have been outstanding. Credit to them. I think I talked trash even about the play-in tournament. It worked.
They heard you.
Yep. You got 2 teams still out there competing from play-in games right now. Ratings have been up big time across the entire league. So they've been treating us with a great product, and I can't wait. I can't wait to see what's going to happen the rest of these series going forward. I'm super excited about the conference finals, regardless who's going to make it. And I think the NBA finals are going to be fun. I agree with you. Seeing a city like Denver being able to host the NBA finals, and you get Jokic in there, which is a 2-time MVP, and the rest of that roster, Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter Jr., guys like that, that's going to be awesome. I think that's going to be really good for the league. Get some new blood out there. Jokic is a player that deserves all the love, all the accolades, all the spotlights he deserves. That he should get right now. And be interested to see who comes out the East. I still think Boston can get it together. They need to get it together. Tonight is a big, big, big moment for them. And if we get like Jokic versus Tatum, that'd be really fun. But I think the streets want Jokic versus Embiid. Especially talking about the MVP talk all year. You get those two big men, and it'd be cool to see a return of the center versus center NBA Finals.
That would be cool, seeing the former MVP and the current MVP going at it. And, just circling back and put a pin on the Suns, you're feeling robbed a little bit just with the health of that team and their potential. But Booker has been outstanding. Can't take anything away from him. Who's been disappointing is Kevin Durant, who hasn't seemed to shoulder that load, and who was that big signing that they got in that big trade. And without Chris Paul, you kind of think that it'll fall apart just to a superior team. So we shall see as the week rolls on. And quick hits as we wrap up the show. I talked about it. Jamie Foxx hospitalized for more than 3 weeks now is bananas, but he made a statement, at least on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. He said, appreciate all the love, feeling blessed. So hopefully he's able to get out of the hospital soon and just get back to doing his thing and making us laugh and being entertained overall. That's just a wild thing that was not monitored at all these past few weeks.
100%. There was a point in time where I called Jamie Foxx the most talented man on the planet because of his ability to act. Comedy specials. He's got multiple platinum albums. So he can sing. He's funny. He's an amazing actor. And I completely agree with you. Hopefully he gets well. It's not really our business what he's going through right now personally and health-wise. We just hope that he's able to get back to doing what he loves best and getting back to his family. He's got kids and stuff like that. So we wish him nothing but the best, and hopefully he gets healthy very soon. His
impressions are spot on, too. I mean, we know that he was so good as Ray Charles, and just beyond that, he does hilarious.
Yeah. This guy he was rumored to do a Mike Tyson movie for a long time. He's got a good Mike Tyson voice. Absolutely. If you've never seen his comedy special, I Might Need Security, it is absolutely hilarious. And then he comes back at the end of it and he sings for like 25 minutes. It's just like, it's like, who is this guy? Like, how can you do this? It's kind of like a new age Sammy Davis Jr., but just a little bit more talented. And Sammy was absolutely very, very talented.
It's just unfair, the level of talent that this guy has. Like you said, Grammys and then Oscars and just everything. You get the EGOT soon enough. And on the note of music, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees came out. Willie Nelson. Willie Nelson is fucking 92 or something like that at this point. How is he not in the Hall of Fame already? It's just boggles my mind. Kate Bush, who just I feel like is relevant again because of Stranger Things. But that's my hot take. And then Missy Elliott. Elliott, Sheryl Crow, DJ Kool Herc, Rage Against the Machine, among others. Oh, and Shaka Khan too.
Yes. Yeah, Chicago's own Shaka Khan.
Yeah. Very into that list.
Yeah.
Oh, Don Cornelius.
Yeah, absolutely. Chicago's own Shaka Khan. Yeah.
Wasn't Don Cornelius from Chicago? Did I make that up?
He was. Soul Train was shot in Chicago, so absolutely a lot of Chicago roots here. Shaka Khan will actually be performing this summer at the MCA at the Museum of Contemporary Art this summer. So that's if you're in Chicago, you want to go see her perform. And then while we're talking about Missy, I actually threw on like a week ago her album Super Duper Fly, her first album, and it still holds up. It's still an outstanding album. Speaking of very talented. She could rap, she could sing.
Oh, yeah.
The production that she had with Timberland back then, they had a perfect marriage together. So, well deserved for her as well.
Yeah. The snub, I mean, I remember voting for them because the power is with you, the voters. Tribe Called Quest got snubbed again. It's very surprising. Hopefully again.
Yep.
Well, as we wrap up, Ross, big week. We got May the 4th be with you, as I said, Cinco de Mayo, Kentucky Derby, and the Senate just declared May 3rd Illinois Bacon Day. How about it? But with May the 4th be with you. What's your favorite Star Wars movie? Let's go with that.
Empire Strikes Back.
A fantastic one. The Jedi is also good. Jedi we saw the banged up Mark Hamill, and we see it all, the trilogy all come to an end, of course. Favorite character?
Han Solo.
Han Solo guy. I would take the Chewie to your Han Solo.
Yes.
Will you be celebrating Cinco de Mayo?
We have a school event. It's an interesting event. It's like a casino night at Fireplace Fireplace House Restaurant. So that's how we'll.
That's swanky.
Yes, yeah. So that's how we'll be celebrating, dressed up, hors d'oeuvres. I will have a mezcal margarita on the rocks for Cinco de Mayo as we are there betting on fake casino games for charity.
No, you'll be like, come on, put down real money.
Exactly.
That'll be fun.
Yep. Speaking of betting, the 20 horses are out for this weekend's Kentucky Derby. And your favorite right now is a horse called Tappet Trice.
I like
5-1 favorite. I'm sorry, no, let me take that back. Forte is 3-1 favorite.
That's what I was right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then your long shots, you've got Continuar at 50-1, Lord Miles at 30-1, Sun Thunder at 30-1, and then my favorite horse's name, Hit Show, at 30-1.
Hit Show, yeah.
I like the Hit Show.
I mean, a lot of 30-1s and 10-1s and all that. And you think that it obviously comes down to the trainers, and we won't get a Bob Baffert horse this year, but Forte and Tappet Trice are those leaders. And then rounding out third is Angel of Empire, 3-1, 5-1, 8-1. You feel like besides last year was kind of fluky, but one of those leading horses should get out there. But Practical Move, I love that name for a horse who wins too. That could be the winner. You got a horse you like?
Yeah, I think I like Hit Show at 30-1. I like that name. And then two Phils. Two Phils.
Two Phils, not Tree Phils. Two.
No, who would be your would it be like Phil Collins and Philip Banks? Like who would be your favorite Phils?
Dr. Phil and
Dr. Phil. Philip
Uncle
Seymour Hoffman.
Dr. Phil and Uncle Phil. Three Phils are too many, though.
Three Phils are too many. Nobody wants three Phils. Just two is fine.
That's a fucking crowd. All right. Well, we can wrap up now. Thanks to everybody for listening in and watching along on YouTube. Remember to like, subscribe, tell a friend or two, and follow the Barroom Network at Barroom Network on Twitter. Follow Ross and myself. Follow me at The Real Evan Mac. Follow Ross at Ross Reed. If you missed this past show or any of this show and any of our past shows, check us out on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts and shows. Entertainment. Thank you to Aldo putting us on here. Everybody enjoy the Derby in this great week, and the NBA playoffs. We'll be back next week, and we'll talk about it all once again. For now, we say deuces. Be good to each other out there. So long.